Hello and welcome to another Spark AR tutorial, and in this video we'll be looking at how we can control an image sequence. So what I've already done is I've already created a folder of assets which is in this zip file which you can get via Blackboard, and inside that zip file we have our AR poster cover, which will be a layer image that we could put over the top of our AR poster, which will be our scannable, alongside a blink, a pause, a play, a pyramid and TV image. And on this TV, we'll be creating a plane that will play a image sequence that we'll be able to pause and restart as we see fit. So what I want to do now is I'm just going to open up a new Spark AR project. I'm going to go to Project, Edit Properties, and I'm just going to turn off Instagram option, like so. I'm going to add an object, and I'm going to add a fixed target tracker, formerly known as target tracker. They've recently renamed this, like so, and we should get this little grid here. With the target tracker selected, we go to texture and we choose we'll need to choose our target image. So to do that, I'm just going to extract all my images first. I'm just going to select my poster cover, AR poster, blink, play, pause, pyramid and TV. I'm going to leave my two sequence folders for now and just import those into my project, like so. Now if I select my target tracker, I can choose a texture, and I want to choose my AR poster. So I should have my AR poster image now on the screen, like so. I'm going to right click on this and I'm going to add a plane. I'm going to bring this plane forwards a little bit, and I'm just going to use this little scale tool up here to scale this plane up, and I'm going to actually change my view to be front on to make my life a bit easier, to just scale this plane till it covers our poster underneath, because if we was to segment our objects, we'd end up with seeing the original poster and our assets on top of each other potentially, which we may not want. So with our plane selected, I'm just going to rename this cover for now, and I'm going to create a new material. Select this new material, and again I'm going to rename this cover, so I'm constantly making sure I'm aware of what I'm doing and naming conventions as I go through. Change the shader type to flat and choose my texture to be the AR poster cover, and now we should just have the text without any of the image. So now we have this done, we're going to do some prep work. So again, I'm going to right click on my target tracker, I'm going to add another plane. I'm going to bring this forwards and down a little bit. I'm going to rename this pyramid, and I'm going to just scale this up a little bit. So I'm going to go for about 1.8, I think, on all the values. Again, you can, if you don't get this exactly right, that doesn't really matter too much. We just want to make sure that this is larger enough to balance our TV on when we do that animation on that. Here we go. So now we have our pyramid plane, which currently has no image assigned to it. So we need to, again, select material, create a new material, rename this new material pyramid, and then on this material selected, again, change it to flat and change the texture to be our pyramid image. So I know this pyramid is currently a perfect square, so I'm actually just going to select it, and I'm going to reduce it on the y-axis a little bit till it's about 1.6-ish. So I actually want to be a little bit more squat than what it is just by using the plane as is. So with our pyramid selected and created, we can now go to Static Target Tracker again and right click, add another plane. Again, bring this forwards and just bring this on in front of our pyramid. And I'm trying to position this so it's on the very tip of our pyramid object. I'm going to rename this plane TV. I'm going to select this object and create another new material. Select this new material again, make it flat, and rename this to TV as well. And now choose my texture to be my TV image. Now that is in there, I'm going to scale this up a little bit because it looks a little bit on the small side for what I want. And I'm just going to eyeball this a little bit, but you can sort of see I've gone for like 1.2 values here. I'm just going to try and adjust this so its middle of the TV is just on the point of the pyramid, like so. And now we're going to need to create a screen for our TV. So I'm going to right click on the TV, add a plane. So this will create a child on our TV object. And I'm going to just scale this down a little bit. And I'm going to change my view to be front to make my life a bit easier again. And what I want to do is try and create a sort of 16:9 style ratio. I'm actually going to unlink my plane from my TV at the moment because it's not following the perspective I want at the moment. So I'm just going to bring it forwards a bit more and go back to front. And I'm just going to zoom as far as I can by using the mouse wheel. And I'm going to rotate this to be at the same angle or a similar angle to our TV set. And I'm just going to make sure I'm slowly positioning this to be roughly where my screen would be. So again, I'm just roughly eyeballing this at the moment, and you can spend more time to get this perfect if you wish. There we go. So now if I go back to my front view, this should be roughly correct. I'm just going to bring that up a little bit more. There we go. So this will be our TV screen, and this will be what we are controlling essentially. So with this plane selected, I'm just going to rename this to TV screen. I'm going to parent this to my TV by dragging it onto my TV object, so it's now linked to it. So wherever the TV goes or does, this will follow and do the same. With this TV screen selected, I'm going to create another new material. And this new material I'm going to also change to be flat. And now we need to start importing our animation sequence. So the way to do that is we need to go back to our assets panel, go to add asset, add an animation sequence. I'm going to rename this to TV screen sequence or something to that effect. And where it says texture, I'm going to select choose file, navigate to my TV sequence folder, which should have 15 images in. I'm going to select all of these frames, and you'll notice each of these are named sequentially, so 0000, 0001, etc, etc. With all these selected, I'm just going to click open. And because they're all named sequentially, this should bring it in as an animation texture. So I should now notice under my textures panel, I have this TV screen test 000 frames 1 to 15, sorry. So this here is all 15 of those images in one sequence. So if I actually go to my TV screen material, and actually I just need to rename that quickly. There we go. I can now go to my texture drop down option, and I can now choose my TV screen sequence or my animation sequence, and you should now notice that our TV frames are now playing as if it was a video. And if we look at our our animation sequence, you'll notice it's on loop, so it's actually going to loop indefinitely, and I could adjust the frame rate by changing the FPS here. So at the moment it's just going to keep playing indefinitely, and I actually don't want it to play all the time, so I'm actually going to need to create some objects to act as our play and pause commands. So to do that, I'm going to right click on my static target object again and select plane. I'm going to just change my view slightly, and I'm going to add this cube, or this plane object, sorry, to one of the sides of my object, like so. I'm going to just rename this to play, and I'm going to create another material. Select this new material I've created and rename that to play as well. Change that type to be flat, and change our texture to be play. So we should have this little play button. And in fact, I'm just going to rotate my play object so it looks more like a play button to yourselves. There we go. And what will happen is whenever I tap this, I want this to perform an action. So there's two ways about doing this. I could either go to View, Show Hide Patch Editor, and then add an object tap this way. Or I could just simply select the object I want to have the interaction on. So in this case, this will be our play button. Go to Interactions, Patch, Create, and Object Tap. So now whenever this play object is tapped, it's going to perform an action. So if we look at how we're going to do this, so we're going to link our play button to a loop animation controller, or patch in this case, or actually we're going to link it to an animation. Let's think how we're going to do this. No, we're just going to link this to loop because we're actually going to want this to loop, I think. Like so. So at the moment it will be when this is tapped, this is going to switch, so change this to turn on. So I'm going to actually unlink our object tap from flip to turn on. So when this is tapped, it's going to turn on and perform this action. And at the moment, we need to tell it what it's going to be connected to. So I'm going to, from my loop animation, click and drag from progress to frame transition and insert that. And now I need to change the number of frames to be the number of frames within my sequence. So in this case, there are 15 frames. And then I'm going to select my animation sequence in my assets panel. Select this little arrow next to current frame and link the current frame value from our sequence to our frame transition. So now if I go to my preview window and I tap on Simulate Touch and tap on the play button, it should now play my animation indefinitely, starting off paused essentially. Now if I want to be able to actually pause this, I need to go to back to my static target tracker, and what I'm actually going to do is I'm just going to duplicate my play layer by pressing Command D on my play plane, and I'm just going to rename this to pause. I'm going to move this object to be the other side, like so. I'm going to go to materials and create another new material, and this new material I'm going to rename pause, change its shader type to flat, and choose its texture to be my pause option. And again, I'm just going to adjust the rotation of this pause layer so it's almost vertical, and then just move this to where I want this to be within my scene. So now I have my pause in there. I can go back to, with it selected, I can go to Interactions, Patch, click Create, click Object Tap, and I can now link my pause object tap to this same strand I've done here. So if play object tap turns the switch on, pause will need to be linked to turn off. So if I now preview this and press the play button, it will now play, but if I press the pause button, it will pause on whatever frame it was at that stage. And if I press play, it will continue from that point. If I wanted to reset this, what I could do is I could create a reset icon, but in my case I'm actually just going to use the TV screen itself to reset. So I'm going to select my TV screen object and create a patch, so Interactions, Patch, Object Tap, like so. There we go, and I'm going to link this TV screen object tap to reset our loop animation. So if I now press play, it will keep playing. If I pause it, it will pause it, and if I click on the TV, it will reset it to the first frame of my sequence. And if I press at any point, it will reset accordingly. So this is a very simple way of creating a control for an animation sequence. So we can either have it linked to, like you see here, an object tap, or more simply, we could just have when screen is tapped, it starts the animation playing. But by doing it this way, we have more control over whether it starts or pauses or resets. And just remembering to change our frame transition to be the number of frames within our sequence. And our sequence was created in After Effects. So if I just go to my sequence here, you can sort of see how all our frames are created there. And the way I exported this, I went to File, Export, Add to Render Queue, and I changed this, in this case, to be a JPEG sequence because I don't want to keep transparency. But if yours was an animation that had a transparent background, we could change it to PNG sequence, and you could set it to RGB plus alpha, so it would keep the transparency. But for myself, I kept this as a JPEG sequence because I don't want transparency on this for this purpose. I would then click OK, choose its output location, and you'll notice that these little hashtag symbols here will indicate the number it is in the sequential order. I've made sure that my composition, so if we go to composition settings here, you'll notice that my composition is fairly small, and I've kept my frame rate quite low because I don't want, the more images there are within my sequence, the more laggy it will be when you come back to playing it in Spark AR. And if you was deploying this on mobile phones, you could actually reach the size limit quite quickly. So that's a basic control in there. So if you want to do that, I would recommend pausing and playing this up to the stage now. But now I'm going to basically duplicate this, but this time I'm going to do it and add an eye to our pyramid. So with my pyramid selected, I'm going to right click on it and just add another plane. So like so. I'm going to scale this plane down. I'm going to position this to be roughly in the center of my pyramid, and I want this to be longer than it is high. And I'm just going to create another material. This new material will be my eye material, like so. And again, I'm going to make sure that's flat. So again, I need to go to my animation sequence. Now, actually, what I'm going to do here is something I haven't shown you before. Is actually I'm going to select all of my materials that I've got up here, for example, and I'm actually just going to turn on alpha test. And what that'll do is it'll basically mean that they don't cut into each other in terms of they actually cut out the edges correctly, so you don't get this kind of weird grey box around the objects. So we'll turn it off for a second, and I zoom into here. Sometimes you can get like a grey box around it, but it hasn't kept the transparency correctly. So it's a good idea to turn the alpha test on, just for the sake of sanity. So back in down here, I'm going to go back to my animation sequences and add another animation sequence. And this will be my eye sequence. I'm going to go with this eye sequence selected. I'm going to go to choose file and go back to my folder. Go to my eye sequence, which has 239 images. So this is 234, images. So this is a large sequence. I'm going to press open, and this will take a while to import. But what we're going to do here is we're going to create a option where when we tap the eye, it will blink and add a delay before it opens up again. So this is a bit of a evolution of what we've just done. Here we go. So now you can see I've got my eye sequence imported. So there's 234 frames, which is a hell of a lot. So with my eye selected, I'm going to change my texture to be my eye sequence. So I should have this eye now moving left and right indefinitely. And I'm just going to reposition it till it looks correct to how I want it to within the original design, like so. And I'm just going to rename this plane to eye, like so. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this eye plane that has a texture on. I'm going to go back to interactions, patch, create, object tap. I'm going to then drag from my tap to a switch, like so. And what I'm going to want to do now is I'm going to want to be it to every time I tap this eye, I want it to switch to turn the layer off and open a blink layer. So what the way I do that is I actually duplicated my eye plane, like so. I'm going to rename this to blink. I'm going to create a new material, and this new material will be likewise called blink. I'm going to choose my texture to be my blink texture, and you'll notice it's gone very compressed, so I'm just going to select my blink object and scale it down just to make it sort of narrower, and I'm just going to make it wider. With this blink material, I'm going to change it again to flat, turn on the alpha test, like so, and I'm actually going to go to my blink texture and I'm going to turn on no compression. So this will stop it pixelating heavily when we deploy this onto a mobile device. We don't want to turn no compression on everything, because otherwise it can start making the performance impacted essentially. So if we select our blink plane and we click on our visible icon, so we properties, visible, click on the arrow, so we have our output here. I want this to be linked to our switch, and I want to link my eye visibility, so I select my eye plane, select my arrow next to visible, like so, and I want to again drag from my switch, but this time I want to add a not in between, so it actually starts off visible and then once clicked becomes invisible. And at the moment this will perform this action, but so if I go to click here and I press on the eye, it will close and blink, but it will not reopen. So how do I get to reopen and go back to its original state? Because I can't go back to this object because the object is currently invisible, therefore I can't click on it. How do I get to reopen? Well, what I need to do is I need to drag a handle from my object tap and add a delay patch, link this to my turned off option on my switch, and make sure my object tap is linked to my turn on. It might start off linked to turn to the flip. I just set to that, deleted it, and then relinked it to turned on. I'm going to change my delay time to be 1 second, like so, and I'm just going to restart my effect by clicking this little restart option here. So now when I tap on the eye, it closes, and then after 1 second it reopens. So this is basically toggling it, so it looks like when you poke it, it's closing its eye in sort of pain, and then reopens it after a duration. So this is again a simple way where we can use a delay to re-enable an effect after a set amount of time, like so. And this is again a basic control system of how we can use an object tap to control our animation sequence. And again, this eye was animated in After Effects, and I could have optimized it more than what I have, so bear that in mind. So one last thing I'm going to do is I actually want this TV to have some motion to it. So if I select my TV and I select my rotation value here, like so, and if I was to just change the Z rotation to, let's say, be 56, you'll notice that my TV is rotating around its center pivot point, which is currently in the middle of the plane. So what I want it to do is actually want the TV to look like it's teetering on this pyramid, and I can't adjust its rotation based on the plane the texture is currently on, because I need to actually create a new pivot point. So how do I do that? So the way I do that is I'm just going to select my static target tracker and right click, and I'm just going to create a null object. If I go to and view this from the front and I zoom in, I can see this little yellow box, and I want to drag this yellow box till it's on the point of the pyramid, like so. And from this I'll now drag my TV and move a TV screen child onto the null object, like so. And now if I go to my null object and add my rotation value to my patch, and I was to enter 45 again, it's now rotating around the null object, so I get this more teetering effect. And this is how you can use null objects to adjust pivot points to create things like armatures, for example. So a way I'm going to animate this is I'm not going to animate this in After Effects or another program. I'm actually going to animate this within Spark AR itself. So I'm going to right click. I'm going to go and add my loop animation patch. I'm going to drag from my progress into the scene. I'm going to now add a transition and insert that. And you notice that so I've got these 6 values, it's 3 for start and 3 for end. I'm going to change my end values to be all 0, except for my Z one, which I'm going to change to be something stupid like 60. If I now link my transition to my null object's 3D rotation, it should now rotate between 0 and 60 degrees. And I'm actually going to change my Z-axis on my start to be -60. Actually, I might change this to be a bit less dramatic, so let's try 45. And if I want to adjust the speed of this, I can go to my loop animation speed, and I'm going to change this to be 10 seconds. And if you notice now, it's sort of playing, but once it kind of reaches its new endpoint, it kind of just reverts back to the original position, and it doesn't look very smooth. So to smooth it out, I can enable this mirrored option. And I'm actually again just going to adjust these values because I think it's still a bit too dramatic. So I might just make this -15 to 15. So it will now transition between this value and this value. Once it reaches the end of that, it will return back to this because the mirrored option is enabled. If I want to adjust the sort of way that these key points are moving between one and the other, because at the moment it's on a very linear speed ramp, I can go to my curve and I could change this to be something like bounce, so I can have a bounce in, bounce out. So it has this kind of look where it's sort of hitting something and then bouncing back on itself a little bit. So you can sort of play about with curves and transition values, and we could use this transition property and loop animation property to adjust any values between our fixed start positions and our end positions that we can manually input. So you can sort of see how we've built a little triangle with an eye, a play option, a pause, with a reset, and we've got a transitional effect on our TV to give it a bit of motion. And this is just one part of how we can build a very dynamic interactive poster. And I hope this helps, and if anybody has any questions, please let us know. Thank you for watching.